Hello, and welcome to a short tutorial on how we can use the formative assessment while teaching remotely. Ken O'Connor made this statement recently in regards to our current situation of remote learning during this pandemic. He has written several books about grading and using feedback to increase student engagement in learning. This presentation will address engaging the learner and informing instruction through feedback. Whether students need feedback to know if they're on the right track to show proficiency on a test, or they're on target with the learning objective you're trying to teach via a Zoom or Teams session, you need to collect some data virtually in order to give students some feedback. We're going to learn how to build short formative assessments in Illuminate that can give you, the teacher, an insight into your students' thinking. When building an assessment in Illuminate, you have some options. You can choose how many questions, what types of questions, and how they're weighted. You can do traditional multiple choice, select all that apply, constructed response, and there's a few others we'll see in a minute. So let's start building. Before you start, you always need a plan. So step one is to build your assessment. What do you want to know? Do you want to know prior knowledge? Do you want to know if your students understood a learning target from the last session? Or how are they doing emotionally? I'm going to show an example of one that I built and discuss each question type. Here's one that I built in Microsoft Word. I've made 5 questions. First question is a simple science question, multiple choice. I'm looking to see if they got the information out of an article we read or a diagram maybe that they studied last week. Question number 2 is a math question. I did this one as a choose all that apply. And what I'm really looking for is if students are choosing the solution that makes the two equal. 3 is a Spanish example. If you're working on foreign language with students, this is a fill in the blank, and I'm checking on vocabulary usage after practicing salutations the prior week. Question 4 is a social studies question. I'm looking for that misconception that students think a president can only serve 2 four-year terms. This will be a constructed response question, and depending on the results, maybe I give students some research to do. And then question 5 is that social emotional check-in. And based on their responses, I might be able to connect with students and give them feedback on how to manage a few things. After you have created your assessment, you're going to log into Illuminate. On your dashboard screen, you're going to see your tiles, and you will see a blue tile, maybe in a different location, called Create an Assessment. This is going to give you some options, and today we're going to build a flexible assessment. And the first order of business is a title. I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to name it Feedback Number 1, just like the test that I created, and this kind of is going to represent what session or week that we're in our remote learning. Okay, now it's going to take us to the next screen where I'm going to upload my materials. I like to do this first so I don't forget. You're going to click in the middle, find your assessment, and upload it. Now, I'm just uploading the Word document, and you're going to notice it's automatically going to convert it to a PDF, and it's automatically going to tell you that it is the student assessment. That way it will show up on the screen. Okay, next we need to add our questions. I'm going to add a question, and the default is multiple choice. If I want to add more questions at a time, I'm going to go ahead and add 4 at a time. Okay, so that first question was that science question. It was multiple choice. The answer was A. That's all done. I'm not going to worry so much about the weight right now. Question number 2, that one was a choose all that apply. So we need to make that one a partial credit. Multiple choice partial credit. A, B, and C all satisfied the inequality. Remember, this is the one that I'm seeing if students can get. I'm going to take this off because I don't really need it to score, because remember, I'm using this formatively, and I'm not going to change the weight of it. Question 3 was the science or the Spanish question that wanted you to fill in the blank. So we're going to make that a constructed response, but that's called an explicit constructed response. Enter the correct response, which was llamo. And here's where it can get a little tricky. If you want the system to catch all the possible things that students can write down, then maybe a student is going to have their caps lock on. I know it doesn't make sense for the where it's filling in the sentence, but if you want to put in all of the possible things students can put down that you would choose to say is correct, just don't spend all your time here, because I'm going to show you where you can look at the student responses to get a better idea of who got it right or wrong, because again, this is formatively, we're not really concerned about scoring it. Same with this one. It was also an explicit response. This was about the years a president can serve. The answer is 10, but maybe a student puts in 10 years. Or maybe it's, maybe it is 10 YRS. Again, not to spend too much time here because you're going to be able to see the responses on your screen. That last question was that social emotional question, and that's going to be a complete constructed response. I'm going to have it be extra credit because I don't need the system to score it, and I'm not going to give it a score. So I'm leaving that box checked. Okay, and that's it. You have created your assessment in Illuminate. So we're going to click Done. And we're ready to set it up to administer online. So 2 spots here. You can hit administer here, or you're ready to administer here. We want to administer this online for our remote learning. It's going to take you to a different screen, and we're going to issue what's called a quick code. This is going to generate a little code for us right here, and it's going to tell you when it's available. If you want to change when it's available, depending on when you're doing your Zoom session, or if it's test prep and you want to leave it open, we have to edit that window. I'm going to leave this one the way it is because my Zoom session is this week, and so I'm going to just, the default is a week. Nothing we really need to do here because, again, it is a formative assessment piece. If this was a different test, we'd make some changes. But let's look at the tools. There are some tools. If this is a math one, we could give them some calculators. There isn't really much else we need to do here, and we save it. Okay, so now we need to give the students the information they need to go and take it, and that is right here. When I click on the access code, you're going to get a link. This is the link that I would put in the chat. This is the link that I would send to students. This link will send them directly to the platform and fill in the code for them. So it's saying, you're going to take this test. The only thing they need to do is enter their student ID. So let's take a quick look at that. Okay, so I was a student in a chat. I clicked on the link, and now the only thing I have to do is enter a student number. Next. It's going to tell me the name of the assessment, confirm who I am, and here we go. It's pretty intuitive after that. I see a green button over here to begin test. And here is the assessment you built, and the answer choices are on the right. So quickly, I'm going to fill these in just so you can see what that looks like. Okay, then once a student is finished, you'll see this button up here turn green. We're going to review it, make sure it answered all the questions, and finish. Okay, so the students have finished their assessment, and now as a teacher, I am back in Illuminate, and let's view the assessments that we have. And remember, we're looking for feedback. Number one, I see that it's already there. And this is going to give me my results all together on the assessment of all the kids that took it. Now, remember, I don't really care about the test as a whole. I really am interested in each of the question responses. So I'm going to click the Administer button again. And I want to go back to my online testing. And you see here that 5 students took this assessment. I want to go to the live proctoring. Here's where I can see each question on its own. And notice over here, you don't see the student names. That's because I've already made it anonymous. So if you are looking at this as a class, I would definitely make this anonymous. You can look at it by name if you're going to give students feedback personally in an email or sorts, but I like to keep it anonymous right now. So I can see by question 1 that my science topic is doing very well. Maybe this student, I could ask a quick question or send them a little article to read. Question 2 was that question that went the inequalities, and it was choose all that apply. So I'm going to look at that question. So I hit the questions, and I want to look at question 2. And I can see that a couple kids missed the one that made the 2 sides equal. I might need to do a little mini lesson on that. I might need to just talk to a few students individually. Question 3. Remember, this was the one where we could put a bunch of alternatives in there, but I can see from here that most of my students are doing well with their salutations, and maybe I just need to work with this one individually. Question 4 was the one where I was looking for this misconception. And it's pretty clear as a class that we need to research or discuss this a little bit more about how many years a president can serve. And then question 5 was that social emotional piece. And to me, sometimes this one's the most important. I can now choose what to do with this information and give kids some feedback. Like I noticed this student said it was most difficult to stay focused. And maybe I can send them some information on some ways to do that during a remote learning situation. So this is the positive piece about formative assessments and using it to engage the learner and then to move your instruction forward. I know this was pretty quick, and you can rewatch the video at any time, but I want to give you a few things to consider when starting to use Illuminate remotely for formative assessments. Stay in your comfort zone. This shift to remote learning is new to many of us, and keeping assessment and feedback simple at first is okay. If multiple choice is easy, start there. You can always add more when feeling comfortable. You will only be able to see results that are rostered to you. In other words, if you share an assessment by department or course, teachers will only be able to see students' results if they are on their own class list. Also, during this remote learning time, remember that not all students can attend a Zoom or Teams session due to multiple reasons. So keep in mind that you may have less data to work with than you would face-to-face in class. Remember the quote from the beginning from Ken O'Connor about feedback. This should be about formative feedback and what kids need, and give feedback to students to increase engagement in learning. And finally, in closing, I would like to thank you for completing this learning and wish you success in your next formative assessment process and remote learning.